You know not what's coming, you know what's already present. Following the sound of the bells into your own heart. Into the boundless spaciousness of awareness. Amazingly subtended by this body, however it is, aligning itself with the central axis of your being. And the mystery of the universe, of everything that constitutes who you are, out of which arises this space of awareness, of heartfulness, of wakefulness. and residing here, abiding here. In the immeasurability of it, in the sacredness of the abode that is this moment, fully embodied, at home, in and with yourself. And simply resting here in awareness. For now, in the timelessness of now, the immeasurability of now, and of the vastness of your own heart. Beyond time, beyond space, underneath thinking, narrative stories, available in any and every moment that we make ourselves available, avail ourselves of this radical act of sanity and love and affirmation, realization of profound interconnectedness and ultimate emptiness of whatever narratives we construct around the personal pronouns, centering myself at the center of the universe, which is in itself an unfortunate habit of ignorance that generates a good deal of separation and violence at times and harm. And so none of that's necessary when we rest in the heart. Those impulses can come, they can go, and we don't need to feed them. And I hope that the intention at least is here and has been here for many months now for many of you to let mindfulness become the default mode of your way of living and being in relationship to life and the only moment we ever have. And so no more words are necessary in this extended concatenation over now 13 weeks. This is the 5th day of the 13th week of consecutive gatherings together. And I've had to make use of a lot of words, or felt I had to make use of a lot of words to hopefully entrain all of us into a kind of recognition and realization that really is way beyond any words. And so merely pointing to something you already have, know, and are. So let's rest in that as the words dissolve into the silence that brings them forth at times. And it's always underneath whatever words or thoughts arise in the mind and come out of the mouth. just this moment, just this sitting here, just this being human. And you know what's coming. Just this. Just this. Since we're all well aware that this is our last session, at least for several months, not counting the session on Tuesday where there will be a lot of community conversation around whatever the community wants to have a conversation around, which I think is quite wonderful and I love. I want to make a few comments now and then move seamlessly into expressions of gratitude that are pouring out, and you can feel them pouring out. So, as probably many of you know, and many of you actually teach it, the MBSR curriculum is 8 weeks. It was 10 in the original formulation, but after a couple of 2 years, I cut it down to 8 weeks and added an all-day session for reasons we don't have to go into. But the point is that it ends after the 8th class. And we often say the 8th week is the rest of your life, because there's no 9th class to signal the end of the 8th week. So the 14th week is the rest of our lives. So just as we've said this before, but just as the bells kiss for the briefest of moments, and this 14 weeks in retrospect will be the briefest of moments, the sound goes on, the reverberations linger. And it's my hope that the reverberations from us having been together like this and practicing like this over the past however many weeks you've been a part of this will simply go on forever for the benefit of the world. And as you know, I'm not kidding around about that. I feel incredibly, I take incredibly seriously the various dilemmas that we have found ourselves in, and the coronavirus being only one of them. And we're suffering from a number of diseases and diseases as a species that is actually creating serious problems. At the same time that there's so much outpouring of beauty and love and wisdom and compassion, so in a sense, you could say, what else is new? This has been going on since time immemorial. And if you read the ancient text, you'll see that things go into abeyance and dissolution for centuries at a time and then rise back with Dharma wisdom. And so while we don't want to be attached to any outcome at all, if you care about non-harming, if you care about minimizing harm of all kinds and violence and hatred and greed and delusion, and maximizing well-being and health in every way that we understand the word health and healing and wisdom and transformation, then it almost becomes second nature that our instinct will be to lean in, to move in, to act when it's time to act, and let our doing come out of our being and have it be wholehearted, wise, compassionate, and endless. So just as this 14th week coming up starting Monday will be the rest of our lives, so the practice itself, which is the most fundamental aspect of this in every way, shape, and form, in the being and the doing, is really for the rest of our lives. And if our paths never crossed again, that'd be fine. That'd be okay. We'd all be okay. I doubt very much whether that's going to be the case, because things are fomenting and emerging, and we need time to drop and to marinate and to practice and to connect in whatever ways are available to us and most important to us at this moment. And there are so many resources out there. So I just want to mention a few more resources. I want to mention a few books and also a few resources that you can find online. One being the Mind and Life Institute that I was part of for a very long time, and that in the old days held conversations with the Dalai Lama and groups of scientists and philosophers and historians and uh, on deep topics related to the nature of meditation practice, wisdom, compassion, and the nature of the mind and suffering and what we can understand from science. And science, like everything else, can fall into whirlpools of its own. So it's not the be all and end all, but when we don't pay attention to the science, we see what's unfolding right now in the United States in terms of the coronavirus and our completely pathetic response to it, because we're not listening at the highest levels of leadership to people who know the most. They may not know everything, but they know the most. It's important to actually listen and understand frameworks that are testable and that are true and that we know are true from molecular biology and virology and the nature of DNA, RNA, proteins, lipids, and how they manifest to actually influence the DNA, RNA, proteins, and lipids that constitute this universe that most of us don't know that much about and is a beautiful mystery. So the Mind and Life Institute, or you can find them online, would be a wonderful place for more resources. Richard Davidson Center at the University of Wisconsin, called the Center for Healthy Minds, is another place with, like, very profound resources, cutting edge science, and people who care very deeply about articulating different ways in which the Dharma can be brought into the world, so that it has sort of maximum traction, so to speak, in transcending cultural belief systems and speaks to something that's profoundly universal, even if it comes in different forms from historical cultures of one kind or another. We need all the help we can get, and so we need to draw on all the various cultures available to us, whether they come from this continent or that continent. All continents are, part of this planet, and there's wisdom on virtually all of them. I haven't read much of the kind of texts that have come out of the wildlife in Antarctica. It wouldn't be in written form, but meditating on the beauty and mind-blowing nature of that bottom continent on the earth. That we can learn from everything, and we have to, especially since it's suffering enormously at the moment, melting, as you know. Another resource would be the Barry Center for Buddhist Studies, which holds courses that you might find valuable now online, a lot of them. Also, I just learned that they have opened a bookstore for the first time, and that their bookstore is kind of a link to independent bookstores, so you can get those kinds of books in a way that supports independent bookstores, which are, really suffering enormously in the era of Amazon. And then in terms of books, I realized that I mentioned Mingyur Rinpoche's book, In Love with, several of his books, but In Love with the World. And I thought, well, Mingyur has several brothers, Choki Nyima Rinpoche and Tsoknyi Rinpoche, who are also wonderful, wonderful teachers. And then it turns out that three of them and one more brother, who I don't know, had a father named Urgyen Rinpoche, and Urgyen Rinpoche was said to be, I never met him myself, but one of the most supremely transformative Vajrayana Mahamudra Dzogchen teachers of all time. And he wrote a book called Rainbow Paintings, or this is a book of his teachings translated. And again, as for many of the books that I'm recommending, it's not for everybody. But if this strikes you in some sense, you know, or you become curious about it, even the the title is kind of a big mystery. And the only reason I have this book is that, you know, a Dharma brother of mine, before he died, actually sent it to me inscribed in an incredibly beautiful way. Richard Barsky, who I had known for many, many decades and practiced with, and he sent me this as a kind of expression of profound love and care for me personally right before he died. Two more. I don't want to belabor the point about American history, but it's important for us Americans. And there are just so many books that I'm not going to mention, but this was one that sort of opened my eyes to a certain degree of craziness that's been going on for a very long time in the United States, having to do with the nature of our democracy. And this is called Democracy in Chains, The Deep Understanding of the Radical Right's Stealth Plan for America by Nancy MacLean. And what it emphasizes is this core thing that I mentioned quite some time ago about the Declaration of Independence in the United States, speaking of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But the Constitution speaks of life, liberty, and property. And what's happening now with the wealth inequality in our country is that is what's been going on since before the beginning of the United States in terms of both the genocide and enslavement, and but it's all about wealth sequestration. And she talks about it in the most remarkable terms that are, so what's going on in the United States now is really something that was strategically planned going back 40, 50, 60 years by certain people who wanted to make sure that that the government was understood as, when push came to shove, supporting those people with wealth as opposed to those people who help create the wealth but don't get to participate in it. As we're seeing in spades now, as the pandemic wiped out 40 million jobs in the United States. The people who don't have sort of fallback positions, you know, bank accounts that they can continue to draw on, this kind of thing. They're living paycheck to paycheck on the margins. Another is what's going on, as Yuval Harari emphasized in the books that I spoke about before, about AI and technology connecting with biotechnology to create a new future, and in some sense, a future that we're already entering into. And so this book by a Harvard professor, Shoshana Zuboff, retired Harvard professor at the business school, I believe, called The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. It's only 900 pages. You should be able to work your way through it in a half an hour or so. But to just read in it even is totally illuminating about what's coming. And she did this with enormous kind of objectivity and clarity. So she's not arguing for particular positions, but really showing us that we're living in a universe where we have no idea what is being planned for and what the technology is potentially driving, even if it's not in the plan. That, coupled with the forces going way back in history for dominance, whether you want to call it imperialism or militarism or colonialism, or, you know, these are kind of some of the root excuses for racism and for genocide and for slavery. And this really requires us to wake up as a species to what are we doing to ourselves, because these are all self-generated diseases and diseases that are actually killing the planet, killing ourselves, and encouraging us at certain points to kill each other in unbelievable numbers so that then we can become friends afterwards. And it's patently insane. And so mindfulness, if it can't hold that level of insanity in a relatively objective way that actually allows for the voices that are based on fear and that are based on not trusting ourselves or each other, then that's really important for us to hold that in awareness and not other the other or turn any particular group of people into bad guys. That's really hard work, especially when secretly you think they're the problem, they're the bad guys. That's why we've been emphasizing from the very beginning to take a look. If you think greed and hatred and delusion should, uh, in some sense, not rule the universe, well, take a look at your own. Are you free from greed? Are you free from aversion? Are you free from delusions of all kind or illusion building? No. Harari emphasizes like even the illusion of countries. It's just an illusion. It's a fiction that we're all agreed to. So we're falling into narratives again. And what I'm basically inviting us all to do, we don't know how to do it, is to see the narratives for what they are, thinking, thinking, thinking. And no matter how clever and good they are, if they're not adequate, if they're not big enough to hold the whole, WHOLE, then they're not up to the task of what we have to face as a species in this moment. What, never mind, we have to face what we are facing. And from that point of view, the beat goes on. The world has, in some sense, always been this way. And it will always be this way. There will always be greed, hatred, and delusion. But we are moving, as was said when we talked about factfulness and enlightenment now and all the statistics that show that humans actually are getting less violent in certain ways. We have to complete that project because, as I said, we're only one event away from obliterating any possibility of healing the body politic, the body of the planet, this third rock from the sun, as they say, at just the right Goldilocks distance to not burn ourselves up or freeze ourselves out. And yet we don't appreciate it as much as, and take care of it as of our home as much as we need to. So in the end, I just want to say that it's been, we've touched on some poetry. The poetry has really been meant to be doors into yourself. Ultimately, you're the poem. Your life is the poem. And beyond that, we could say all life is the poem. Can we see it? Or the flowering of life. And how important it is that we embrace all our flowers, not just the kind that we're particularly attached to, but the fact that the earth gives rise to many, many different kind of flowers. And there's a beauty in the kind of wild flowers and wild meadows, and there's a beauty in wild people who actually love our way into sanity and healing as opposed to contracting around legalized violence and injustice and hatred and disregard. So it's a huge form of violence. So I want to express some gratitude at this moment. First of all, gratitude to all of you, to all of you. Some of whom, of course, I know, whether you're on YouTube or whether you're on Zoom, but the vast majority of you I don't know. But I've come to feel over these weeks that somehow I know you. I've certainly recognized you from your, living rooms and various places where I hold up in the kitchen, coming online like this. There's a certain way in which we don't have a language for it because, but I would call it we're becoming friends. And we're really aligning ourselves with the sort of the word I'm using is love affair, but it's a kind of really a passion for Dharma, a passion for intrinsic human wisdom that is part of our birthright. We're actually born with awareness. It's not something we have to acquire. Oh, try to get more awareness. You can't get more awareness. It's yours. It's the access to awareness that gets, overgrown with brambles and thorns and weeds and stuff like that. So we have to keep sweeping the path. We have to keep weeding the garden. We have to keep tending the tenderness within our own heart so it doesn't, become a shell. So I feel enormous gratitude for the fact that when Soren and I and Jon decided to put this out 13 weeks ago, we had no idea that anybody would show up. And look who showed up. You, all of us. And so I want to express my gratitude to all of you and wish you well in all ways. If our paths never cross again, or they cross multiple times in the unknown future, so be it. But I think we have our karmic assignments written out for us, okay? And hopefully written out here in the language of the heart, that we have our karmic assignments. What is worth doing with this one wild and precious life, in Mary Oliver's phrase? What is worth doing that we are called to doing? Don't do somebody else's work, do yours. So I want to turn to Soren and Jon. When we talk about work, I've said this before, but I just want to express my profound gratitude to Soren for our long-term friendship and collaboration and making his platform, Wisdom 2.0, available to us. If you root around on that platform, you will find that there's an enormous universe of interesting wisdom dimensions and people who have been contributing to this work for a very long time in different ways, different traditions, different languages, but it's also a very rich universe. And I've said this before, but I want to underscore that, I've been doing like 99% of the talking, but Soren's influence on this has been at least as profound, maybe more so, because open your mouth, of course, and you're wrong. And so you've all felt the beauty of Soren's embodied heart and how he's held the space. And how he's worked with, and I've worked with John Bashu, who I also go back with a very, very long time to the early days of the Omega Institute, and then again through the early days of Wisdom 2.0. And Jon, I can't tell you how many people have expressed, and you're going to see it in a minute, how many people have expressed a kind of sense of security that you're here. Even if sometimes you shut off your video, we know that Jon Bashu is here. And in the days of this kind of technology and zooming around, knowing that you're here even when you're invisible, maybe it's even more powerful when you're invisible, the invisible presence of Jon Bashu. So I just want to express my own personal gratitude to both of you, and look forward to whatever the present brings tomorrow and the future brings in the coming months and years. And then invite Soren to see if he can find Rasha,
Sure.
who want to sort of turn it over to for a relatively short time for various expressions. Hi there, Rasha.
Hi, Rasha.
And then we'll come back to invite the two of you to speak, and then we'll come back and we'll just see how long this takes, but we'll try to kind of asymptotically approach 3 p.m., the top of the hour. We'll see.
I think you're unmuted, Rasha.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
You can hear me, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you, Jon. And thank you, Soren. And thank you, Jon. And thank you, Wisdom 2.0 for the rest of our life. And we have a little something shared from all of us, including Jon, that we would like to share with you. So I'll just share my screen.
Oh, let's see. I think I have to, one second, make you a co-host and then you can.
Sure.
Is that right, Jon Bashu? Or John, we might need John Bashu's help, but try it now.
Yeah, I believe so.
Awesome.
There we go.
Yes. Yeah,
Wow.
can see it now. Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. So this is a little thank you card from all of us. We've been trying to keep it as secretive as possible. And we've been using the snowball method, actually. We've been trying to hide your, after the Zoom, after parties, you're always there. We don't want you to hear us. We don't want you to know about us, about what's going on. And even in the WhatsApp group, you're always there. So we have so far 222 messages of love for you, for Jon Bashu, for Wisdom too. And I'll just scroll quickly through them.
Mhm.
So these are the countries that participated in the whole card. So we have 35 countries and 20 states from the US that contributed to the card. I'm sure there's lots of others on Zoom here and on YouTube. They want to add the card. I will share the link in the chat on both the Zoom and the WhatsApp, and the YouTube link. So if you want to add your cards later, and I'll explain quickly how to add it. So this is just thank you in all our languages. You've got 36 languages, and we all share to you both, and Wisdom too. Thank you in all the languages we can share, because there's just so much love and gratitude to you. We also thought of maybe sharing the word peace in all the languages. And there's
you helped do this, Rasha, while you were defending your PhD thesis?
Yes, I am. Yeah, that was my ultimate meditation. That was what just kept me going. So this is just so dear to my heart, like everybody else. And I've been getting lots of emails. Make sure Soren and Jon Bashu get this today. I'm like, okay, guys, make sure. So this is I'm just going to go through quickly a view of the slides. So this is one of the paintings, and John B, you have your pictures there as well. And Soren, I think this is before your haircut.
Yeah.
And John, our beautiful Janet Sloan, has a beautiful piece of art as always. And Jon Kabat-Zinn, would you be willing to share with us this piece of poetry that Kathy wrote, explaining the whole experience? I'm sure that Jon will say it way nicer than my own voice. So Jon, would you?
I doubt that, but I'll have a go at it.
I would love to hear it from your voice, if you don't mind.
I have not, I've seen this, but I have not actually read it through before. So it's first time for everybody else. It's also first time for me. So grateful to you, Soren. Your kind compassion zooms right through my screen into my heart, spreads through our breakout rooms. I feel your hands extending with warm welcomes to each. Your calling is so vital now to thousands that you reach. With more raised hands than time allows, you do apologize. Spotlighting those whose hands you choose adds joy to our goodbyes. And grateful to you, Jon B, for your priceless expertise maintaining flow behind the scenes with technicalities. This Wisdom Tools community becomes a cherished treasure. And as we shift from this retreat, we'll still be linked together. So thank you, Jon and Soren, and all at Wisdom 2.0. Our mindlessness community has blossomed thanks to you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, so we have more beautiful cards. I'm just going to scroll quickly through the cards here to be easier to just go through them. And as Rumi said, there's a voice that doesn't use words, listen, so just be quiet.
And as you said, people should feel free to add their own here. And
I'll add,
this will stay up on some website, right? So it will be available for us to read in detail, card by card.
yes, this will stay on my Google Drive, and
Okay.
I'll post a link right now on YouTube, and I'll post a link here
Wonderful.
if you want to add.
Wonderful.
And there is one slide that I would like to end with. Like, I couldn't help not sharing this beautiful smile from Melise. And our last slides here. Beautiful
Oh,
Chris and her mom.
this
And
is your mom.
Chris, your mom is our mom, is everybody's mom. So this is just, I thought it's a beautiful slide to end this cards with. And as I said, there's no end and there's no beginning, and every end is a new beginning, and every new beginning comes from some other beginner's end. And at the end of this, I mean, Jon Kabat-Zinn, I mean, we cannot be not thankful for you. And just, there's no words to tell you how thankful we are. So we're just going to leave you with just very simple words. May you be happy. May you be well. May you be safe. May you be peaceful and at ease.
Thank you, Rasha.
Yeah, just those words from the Meta Loving Kindness. We leave you with this. And if you don't mind, this was your, remember that was your birthday card?
I do remember it, yeah. This one I have.
Kathy tweaked it a little bit, so this will be a closing for our sessions together. If you, do you mind reading it?
I mean, I have to read an ode to myself.
It's as if you just received it in the mail, and imagine you're opening the
Okay,
card.
I'll approach it with don't know mind. Okay. Our daily mindfulness retreat with Jon Kabat-Zinn. What an extraordinary 3 months this has been. You've taught me I can learn to surf. Don't try to stop the waves. Say us, not them, not there, but here. Watch how my mind behaves. Your guidance is a pointer to our wisdom deep inside, and close beside our questions, the answers do reside. Beyond the words you utter, I learn by how you be. You listen, care, and honor each with authenticity. Even when I hear your words 50 billion times, my practice keeps on deepening past ringing of the chimes. For 76 years now in this body you have dwelled. You've impacted countless humans that your teachings have propelled. Spreading mindfulness throughout the world has been a grand endeavor. Who knew from home we'd be here now with thousands joined together? The best gift I can offer along with this ovation is that my life has been enhanced past formal meditation. So thank you, Jon and Soren, and also John Bashu. Our mindfulness community has blossomed thanks to you. With gratitude and love, Kathy Shapiro, Orange County, California, USA, planet Earth. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Rasha.
Oh, thank you so
Thank
much.
you, everybody. You know, I'm not that into publicly reading poems of praise to myself, but I've made an exception because you'll all understand how I was coerced into it.
Thank you. And thank you so much. And I'll just will end this from just words from my heart, with my native language. Shukran, Rabbina yahfazku ya Rabb. It's in Arabic, which translates, thank you so much, and may God protect you and keep you for us. Jon, and Soren. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Very soon. Love you.
Thank you so much. And good luck on your thesis.
Thank you so much.
The world needs it and is waiting for it.
Yes.
Okay. So Soren and John, I want to leave you some room to respond to this, of course. That seems
Go
only
ahead, John
fitting.
Bashu. Do you want to start, John Bashu? I don't know. Let's see.
I'm here. Am I muted? Yeah, no, here we go.
You're good.
I'm deeply touched. Thank you very much. It's been an honor. I was telling Jon Kabat-Zinn and Soren earlier before the session how grateful I am. This has been a savior for me, being in lockdown, and I'm truly grateful to be part of this, in support of this community, and thank you all for the love. Deeply appreciate it. Soren, thank you for inviting me to the party. And John, as always, it's a pleasure to be with you daily. We've known each other a long time. And thanks to this community, really. Wow, I'm touched. I feel the love. Thank you.
Thanks. I was looking, let's see. I was looking, Jon Kabat-Zinn, today to find the original email I sent you. It was March 17th with just this open inquiry of what if we did a session, for just open free session for people to explore mindfulness in these challenging times. And I was reflecting on how that one inquiry kind of came into this piece. And I really think, when I first met you, John, when I would go to your classes, you taught a lot about mindfulness and awareness and presence. And as I've gotten to know you 30 some years, this word love has kind of showed up more and more in your heart and in your words. And as I look at what happened from that kind of initial thing to, going on now 13 weeks, the best way I can describe it is I feel like I fell in love. I feel like we fell in love. We fell in love with this international community of people that speak all these different languages and have all these strange names and try and getting on from all over the world. And there's something so beautiful about that to me, in the sense that there wasn't any separation between, me in this country with this name and this house and these other people and these other places in the world. And it was really the love that I think I felt from everybody here that I think has really propelled and made this community so special. And so I'm just super grateful to be a part of it. I'm super grateful to have the role that I had to play. I've been super grateful to get to talk to both Johns every weekday. It's been hugely rewarding for me and lovely for me. And I've been really, really grateful that all of you have kind of entered into my heart. And I don't think you're leaving anytime soon, even though we might not, who knows how many times we'll see each other in the future. But just really want to thank everybody and thank for the goodness and the heartfulness that you've brought to this. It's really created a field that's been unlike anything I imagined even possible creating. And so just deep thanks. And thank you so much for the heart and the work isn't the right word, but the heart that you put into showing up here as much as you can and doing the practice with us. It's just meant the world to me. And so I don't really see this. I know there's on one level, there's an ending that's happening. But on another level, I don't see anything ending. It reminds me, supposedly Ramana Maharshi, who's a great teacher in India, he was dying and his student said, Ramana, don't leave us, don't leave us. And supposedly he responded, leave you? Where is there to go? And so there's nowhere to go, but here we are. So you're still in my hearts, and thank you again for joining us, and till next time. So I think I'll pass it back to JKZ. Let's see.
Soren, and Jon Bashu, I think that one of the aspects of this whole thing has been a learning curve for all of us, that in times that are very challenging in many ways, it is possible to open rather than contract and shut down. So although we've been forced to be on this retreat in a certain way, And one of the reasons when we had our original conversation was to formulate it this way was that, you know, the world is being shut down, but not everybody has a kind of effective repertoire of skills for understanding what it might mean to take refuge, to create some kind of shelter. When we use the term sheltering in place or lockdown or you know, social distancing, but basically constraining ourselves if we weren't first responders or service people who were like keeping the bare bones of everything going with food and with services. Excuse me, that we would have to stay home as an act of compassion for other people. And we see what's happening now when people can't stand staying put anymore and they're going out to bars and, you know, creating huge spreading events throughout the south and west of our country now because they didn't want to continue following basically what we've been doing. But this has been an incredible opportunity for us to actually take refuge, not in our homes, but in our hearts. And then discover, because of Zoom, because of the technology, that we actually are taking refuge in each other. That we're taking refuge in something that's much larger than ourselves. And Soren, as I said, I could never have done this without you and with John Bashu. And I think there's a kind of mutuality in that. But the fact is that we could never have done it without every single person who's contributed in some way to something that our minds will never be big enough to be able to wrap it themselves around what has actually happened in these 13 weeks. And I love that because it's like the bells. The kiss was 13 weeks, but the reverberations, whatever they are, will go out. And that includes our friendships, our relationships, you and me, and you and John, and me and John, because that's part of this love affair. It's not like, oh, Jon Kabat-Zinn just got too old and romantic and started blabbering about love. It's been this way from the very beginning. But when you're basically in a medical center and trying to bring something as far out as meditation into the mainstream of medicine, and the words sound a lot alike, and they are, because they are deeply rooted at the etymological hip, then if you talk about a love affair, that meditation is not just kind of meditation, it's a love affair. You know how long I would have lasted in the Department of Medicine? About a nanosecond. But the fact is that that's discoverable when you drop in that, and you get beyond the idea of like, oh, I'll become a better person by meditating, or I will control my mind, or I will be able to improve on myself. So we've had to develop over the past 40, 50 years, a new way to language the wisdom of Dharma in a kind of universe. And we're just in its infancy. So have we made mistakes, or have we, you know, sort of not emphasized certain kinds of things? I think absolutely. And it's a very big community. When I say we, I don't mean me or you or Wisdom 2.0. I mean everybody who's part of this unfolding, which really is in some sense a love affair. And we heard that from Cliff Sarin when he was inviting us to participate in the research, that too is not just kind of like a research project in the classical way, but it's part of this love affair of exploring through, you know, high level science to whatever degree it's capable of, what the effect of this mitigation retreat has been on us and on many other people who have been through the COVID pandemic, but who knew how to relate to it in a slightly better way simply by having had some experience with retreat, with dropping in, with simplifying life, with going from busyness and being and filling up all our moments to staying home in the truest sense, where this is the home. If you can see that I'm touching my heart. So, I feel like it's been such a privilege for us to be together in this way. I mean, such an incredible privilege, and that it's really appropriate to watch the ripples for a while and not throw more stones in the pond. That I, for one, need to go on retreat from this retreat and let my life settle in the midst of this pandemic, which is not going anywhere. Ask some deep questions about what's now and what's coming. And so for me, the retreat continues. It's just not so much a mitigation retreat in the way that we've been, but it is the love affair of the practice in a time of high stakes, very high stakes, how we actually behave as cells of the one body politic makes a huge difference in the health of the body politic, whether it's the planet or the United States or your country or whatever it is. And we're all doing the best we can. We don't have to be perfect, by the way, whatever perfection would mean, the best meditator, the greatest meditator. No, it's all about, it took me a long time to actually recognize that taking my seat in the morning was a radical act of sanity. Just to stop and drop. No time, just this. And I hope all of you, if you don't remember anything else, that when you wake up in the morning, you practice in bed every day. Because, for all the reasons we've gone into, I don't need to talk about them anymore. But practicing lying down in bed and then getting your body down on the floor and working with it while it still works is really, really a good idea. And it's just a different door into the same room, and very, very powerful door in supporting your mindfulness practice. And everything then becomes part of the love affair. Every form of working with the body, aerobic exercise, even lifting weights. I mean, it's all like, do you put on earphones and distract yourself, or do you tune in to the actuality of how this feels as I'm lifting or placing it down or turning or twisting or whatever it is that you're doing. And that's tuning the instrument before you take it out on the road, if you can get out on the road and use it. And I'm talking both metaphorically and literally. And this is an ongoing thing. I mean, it's not like you tune your violin once and then 40 years later it's still in tune. No, we're continually having to tune our instruments of wakefulness and to tune them to each other. So I will basically close by reminding us all of what we already know. That the key exploration here has to do with the koan. What am I? Or who am I? In fact, Ramana Maharshi, that was his door in when he was at age 16. That's a story I'm not going to tell, but people who are interested could pursue it. Age 16. And he woke up very suddenly, much more suddenly than most of us ever wake up. And it was like for good. But what am I? Who am I? To question and not believe the narrative around I, me, and mine. I think the Buddha actually is famous in the Bahia Sutra for saying that all of his teaching could be encapsulated in one sentence. And I like to say on occasion that if that actually is true, that he did say that, and that maybe we should memorize the sentence, even if we don't understand it. Because, I mean, if the Buddha said 40 years worth of his teachings on mindfulness, which is the heart of the Buddhist teachings, could be encapsulated in one sentence, maybe it would help to actually carry it with us in our wallet, if not in our hearts. And that sentence is, nothing is to be clung to as I, me, or mine. And the operative verb is clinging. It's not, there is no I, there is no me, there is no mine. Of course there is. But that's where the imprisoning can happen that Einstein was pointing to. Our personal desires to a few persons nearest to us. A prison that becomes an optical delusion of consciousness, a separate self. So we need as many reminders from as many ways, as many minds, as many hearts. And if you look around, you'll see those reminders are everywhere. Every child, every person walking down the street, in some sense, like it's a fully embodied human being, maybe on autopilot, maybe lost in thought or caught up in anger or fear or whatever, but truly a miracle. And when we relate to each other as miraculous beings, as we do with the patients who show up in the stress reduction clinic in MBSR, when you relate to somebody else as a miraculous being without being an idiot about it and say, hey, I see you as a miraculous being, but more just like keep in mind that this person is, true nature is miraculous being. First descriptor of the person. How you will be in relationship with even very challenging social situations will change, will be different. And so the practice goes on. Gary Snyder, one of our great contemporary poets who's now in his 80s and spent years, decades, I think, in Japan studying Zen and also, traveling the world, meeting with anthropologists and all sorts of interesting people. He wrote a very long, extended sutra, he called it, called the Mountains and Rivers Sutra. And the last lines of that sutra that go on, it goes on and on, has a lot of different chapters and verses to it. But the last lines I'd like to share with you. The space goes on, but the wet black brush, tip drawn to a point, lifts away. The space goes on, but the wet black brush of the calligraphy, tip drawn to a point, lifts away. So after 13 weeks, we are lifting away. Nothing's changed, nothing's different, nothing's ending, nothing's beginning. We're just, life is unfolding. And the more we can fall awake and the more we can fall in love with wakefulness, moment by moment, the planet is already the better for it in ways that the mind and my mouth will never be able to articulate. So thank you, Juan, and thank you all. This has been a marvelous confluence of just manifestations of caring and wisdom and love. And I really look forward to the next chapter, so to speak, when the brush comes back down onto a new piece of paper and invites itself to see what's here in that moment that will always be and will still be now. And Soren, this
We're here
bow's for you.
again.
This bow's for you. John Bashu, this bow's for you. And this bow is for everybody. Love you, folks. Keep up the one great work. And make sure your ass is on the cushion tomorrow, or at least in bed.
All right. And I know, Jon Kabat-Zinn, so much appreciation has been sent your way, but just a deep bow to you for all that you give the world and all that you have given the world and continue to give the world. It's remarkable. And I'm honored to be your friend and honored to partner with you in anything you ever want to do. So deep bows to Jon. And if there's nothing else, Jon, I will open that up. Okay. So you can now, now unmute yourself. You can say, what do we say? Do we say goodbyes? We can say whatever we want to say.
I guess so.
Hellos, goodbyes, thank yous, anything. All right.
Thank you.
Most peaceful guys.
So much.
And thank you, Sangha.
I need you. I love you.
So much, Jon Kabat-Zinn. All of you, and thank you everyone in the community. It was a true honor.
Merci à tous. Au revoir.
Thank you.
Bless you and everyone.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Thank you, John.